So the plane has just dropped us off on Mason Bay, which is maybe about a 20-minute flight from Invercargill over Stewart Island. And as we stepped off the plane, the first thing that my eye was drawn to was this yellow piece of plastic fishing rope, which really just stands out in the sand because it is such an unnatural colour. And fishing rope like this is plastic. It doesn't wash up. It will eventually just break down into the sand and become microplastics. And as you just walk further up, just a couple of steps, you can already see a lot of these microplastics in the tidal mark. So you can see all these blues, greens, pinks, and I've just had a little bit of a walk around, just a few minutes, and I've already seen a toothbrush, there's a gun cartridge over there, lots of plastic bottles and plastic bottle caps. And for such a remote and beautiful and wild spot with no one around, it's just really shocking and quite sad to see.
It's like strewn at the high tide mark all across the beach, just tiny bits of plastic. And you think if that's the stuff we can see, imagine all this, like all these little bits that are broken down even further that can barely even photograph. That's just the stuff I can see.
I'm not surprised. Plastic is so ubiquitous. It's very, very hard to manage waste streams with plastic, and I would expect to see that almost anywhere now. The presence of macro and microplastics on remote beaches tells us that plastics are everywhere, that there isn't anywhere that hasn't been touched by our love affair with plastic.
So we've just walked maybe a few metres up from the beach, up on the track to the hut. We climbed up a sand dune here and looked down, and the first thing we saw is this quite large pile of rubbish, and it's mostly, you can see, commercial fishing gear. There's some fishing buoys, some rope, these stolen from Tally's crates, which are quite familiar to us. In 2019, Stuff was part of an expedition to Henderson Island, which is an island in the South Pacific about halfway to South America, and we actually collected a number of these stolen from Tally's crates. So a sad but not unfamiliar sight to us, and what we reckon is trampers on their way to the hut, which is probably a 15-minute walk from here, have picked up this gear and collected it into a pile in the hope, I guess, that at some point someone will come and collect it and take it from the island.
It was just really upsetting, to be honest, because I had no idea we had so much waste coming up onto our seashores. Not like that, not in that quantity. Yeah, it's really sad.
I'm not surprised to hear that there are plastics that are likely not to have come from New Zealand on this beach, and this remote beach. We sit at the bottom of the world. We have some very heavily populous areas to the north of us. We sit downstream on the currents, so I would fully expect that makes it more challenging for New Zealand to manage plastic, because we're not only managing our plastic.
There's some rope. Cool. Here, what's that? Looks like a chair. Oh God, that's like a deck chair. I reckon this is come off a cruise ship, don't you think? God, it's huge. It's really heavy. Oh yeah, look. I reckon this is a deck chair off a cruise ship that's washed overboard. It's really, I can't even imagine that floating. It's really heavy. Wow.
It looks like one of those things where you rip the plastic bags off it. And what's weird is that we banned plastic bags ages ago, and this is the third or fourth one of these we've seen. So it makes me think that maybe it's come off a foreign boat or something like that, because by the time we ban plastic bags, that would be way more deteriorated than what it is.
We've come across another pile of rubbish that's been collected up by hikers along the beach. It's a Tally's fishing crate, and in it are some fishing rope. I think that's a lobster pot and some other bits and pieces. But further down here in the dunes, if you look really closely, there are some kiwi tracks and a little bit of a bum slide here, and the kiwi tracks go up into the dunes. And it's just a reminder that this huge sand dune system is home to a really wide variety of unique and special wildlife that's having to live in amongst all this plastic rubbish.
We were really lucky. We got to see a kiwi, our first kiwi in the daylight, and we just got to watch it for about half an hour. It was amazing. It's just beautiful around here. And then as we were walking back from Sand Hill, we decided to take a shortcut through all the sand dunes out to the coast, and we were about probably at least 500 metres from the coast, and we started seeing these bits of plastic, like bits of blue plastic strip and white plastic strip, like packing strip. And obviously it had blown in from the sea. And then as we got closer and closer to the beach, we ended up seeing more and more plastic, bigger bits of plastic, old plastic bags, fishing nets, ropes, Tally's fishing boxes, all sorts of stuff. And so we ended up actually giving up our looking for kiwis and started picking up plastic, which wasn't the intention.
There's growing bodies of evidence that certainly for organisms interacting with plastics is contributing to the death of wildlife. So we've all seen the entanglement pictures, so on that big scale, stops them from swimming, stops them from feeding. There's starting to be increasing information about what happens when they eat plastic. So they will be exposed to the chemicals that are in the plastic. We don't always fully know what chemicals they're being exposed to. And the plastics themselves can, depending on the size, so if they remain in the gut, the animal will then maybe not feed because it feels full, it's got enough false sense, it's not hungry. So then it doesn't have the energy to reproduce and grow and do all the things the animal should be able to do.
Well, we've done some wonderful hiking tracks on our way from Nelson down to here and down to Stewart Island, and we've hardly seen any rubbish on the tracks at all. It's just been amazing, and we've been so impressed that both Kiwis and our international visitors haven't been leaving rubbish on the tracks. But then you come down to a beautiful coastline in the southern part of New Zealand, and there's all this rubbish all of a sudden, and it's like, oh my God.
So why does the fishing industry use plastic fish bins? Primarily because of hygiene. That's the number one driver, is that they don't absorb any bacteria. You obviously clean them, sanitize them, and resend them back out to sea. The last thing we want is for them to be going overboard and getting washed up on the shore. There's obviously a financial cost associated with that, but also, you know, the impact on the environment. So yeah, we're all trying to do our part and trying to keep them on board our vessels and on our land-based factories. We're actively involved in doing the beach cleanup down there. We've invested financial contribution to it, and we also have our staff out of our Bluff depot. They go down and they help do the beach cleanup.
So it's evening, and today we've covered pretty much a good stretch of this 14-kilometre beach. We walked north, found a lot of plastic debris, some of it large, fishing buoys, nets, crates, just every kind of household item imaginable. Trying to pick it up, but honestly, I mean, there's just so much rubbish that it is ultimately pointless.
We need to decide as a society what is a good use of plastic and what is not an acceptable use of plastic. Now, we've been here before with materials. We've done this with asbestos. We decided when we could use it and when we couldn't use it. So maybe for plastics, particularly single-use plastics, great if it's a syringe that you're going to have your COVID vaccination with. Not great if it's something that's going to be disposed of straight away and doesn't have an added benefit. Alongside that, we're going to need to increasingly regulate what can go in plastics, what additives are okay, and what are acceptable levels of additives. And this will be across everywhere that we use plastics, and that extends into our clothing as well, which are increasingly being made from the same materials that we would normally consider to be plastic.